The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the views of the Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. I'm your host, Kim Droege, and we're so glad you joined us today because we have another terrific show coming up. But before we do that, allow me to ask you to like and follow our Instagram, Facebook, and X account, where you will find all the information about the show, about the guest, about the subject matter, and of course my on-air wardrobe, which comes from my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay Boutique, located at 4415 West Osborne here in Tampa. And the net proceeds from the thrift store and the boutique help support their mission, which is providing safe spaces and empowering services for survivors of domestic violence and their children. And they've been doing a great job for more than 40 years, and I really want you to support them. You can also catch the audio of our show on Sun Radio or on your favorite streaming platform. Sun Radio's at 96.3 FM, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 3:30. We started out on radio. We came to cable, but we like to keep that little connection going. We ship our audio down to Sun Radio and they air it for us. And I want to introduce you to my guests. I've really been looking forward to this episode because I've known this gentleman for many years. And we've known each other through political circles. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, because he is involved with this wonderful effort, which I just felt everyone in the world out there should know about, because it is part of our history, part of our Florida culture, and it's important to preserve and respect and educate people about those things. So my guest in the chair today is Mark Proctor, who is the chair of the Timberley Trust for the Moseley Homestead in Brandon. And we're going to have a chat with him about that today. So welcome, Mark, to Connecting with Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
It's his first time, so this is so great. We love first-time guests. So we start off the same way every time. We love our guests to share something about their life journey as much as they feel comfortable with, because you just never know when somebody out there watching and listening has things in common with you, right? And so they might want to sit there and say, oh, I'm going to watch this show, even though the subject matter is going to be amazing. So take it away.
Sure. As you mentioned, politics. It's kind of my hobby, and actually I kind of do that more and more all the time now, working with some of the local judicial candidates. I was in the real estate business in Brandon. In fact, I was the first commercial real estate brokerage in Brandon before Brandon exploded with the malls and everything. But I had the first commercial real estate company there, and we did very well. But I got involved in the community. So I became president of our local Chamber of Commerce. I became president of our Kiwanis Club. I became president of the Round Table. All these various organizations. I ran for office. I ran for the state legislature. In 1984, I lost. I was a Republican running against a longtime Democrat, and I lost. I ran again in 1996 for the state Senate, and I lost in the Republican primary to Tom Lee, who went on to become the Senate president. My involvement in politics and the community is really part of my life, because that's what I do. I feel that if you don't give something back, it's not worth it. A lot of times people just kind of go through their life and make a lot of money and stuff. I don't make a lot of money, but I feel I've contributed something to the community, and that's really what's important to me. I was appointed by Jeb Bush when he was governor to the Tampa Sports Authority. I was chairman of that. I'm currently a member of the Hillsborough Public Safety Coordinating Council. I've been on that for 30 years now, representing the community, and I do a lot of those type of things. Going through this journey, I had a neighbor, Joyce Washington, who called me over and she said, I want you to meet this woman, Julie Moseley. And Julie Moseley, at the time I was president of the Chamber of Commerce, she said, we have a problem. And I said, what's the problem? She said, Lakewood Drive, which is an oak-lined, 100-year-old oak canopy, the MPO wants to cut that down and make it a 4-lane highway. She said, that's ridiculous. And I said, I agree. And this is how I met her, as we went out and fought to keep it off the long-range planning. By the time they had the hearing at the Brandon High School, we had all the oak trees had yellow ribbons around them, and the auditorium was completely packed with people who said no. So we were taken off of the long-range plan for widening Lakewood. People sometimes complain. I live right off of Lakewood. People complain because of traffic sometimes. But you know what? You still got that beautiful canopy of 100-year-old oak trees. So that's how I first met Julie Moseley. And then, of course, I got somewhat criticized by people because you're in the business community. We're supposed to widen the roads and make things, I said, no, I think we should kind of preserve some of the stuff that we have. I actually tried to make Lakewood Drive a historic thing, and I got the legislature to approve it, and then there was a lot of pressure put on Senator Malcolm Beard, and they killed it. But
well, let me ask you something. So, are you a native Floridian, Mark?
I was born in Florida. I'm a
that is a very important thing to say in your journey, Mark, because there are so few native Floridians.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I was born in Daytona Beach, Florida. My father was the assistant manager of the Chamber of Commerce, and then he was elevated to the director back then, executive director of the Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce. So I lived down there growing up, went to Florida State University, went to graduate school. I was a major in mass communications. I didn't want to come to Tampa, but I was offered a job with the Florida Dental Association, which was located in Tampa, as their director of communications. Long story short, that's how I ended up.
That's how you ended up in Tampa, right?
I ended up here, and I had an Irish setter. I needed to go to the vet. However,
I know where this is leading.
However,
oh my gosh.
However,
yeah,
I also needed to go out of town.
Yeah.
So I went to the local veterinarian. There was a young doctor there, female doctor, and I said, my dog needs a checkup. Now, do you board animals? No. Okay, well, I'll be back later. And I went for a 3-day trip. I came back. And she said, boy, you really had. So I said, well, let me take you out to dinner. And then went. Long story short, I ended up marrying her.
I know. I was wondering if you were going to talk about your lovely wife, and because I know she's been a vet in Brandon for a really long time.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's understand the reason I wanted to share this story today and have you on the show is about the Moseley Homestead.
Yes,
So now we know that you've met Julie Moseley.
Yes.
And so let's kind of proceed from there. The Moseley Homestead is from 1886. And multi-generations of Mosleys lived there. And it's in Brandon. And it is still there in its, original. In fact, one of the things that amazed me when I look at the pictures is how much of that homestead is actually exposed to the elements. It's a Florida treasure. And these are the kind of things that we need to preserve, even in our rush to develop and modernize and accommodate all these people that want to come to Florida. We need to preserve this heritage. So tell me what happened after you meet Julie Moseley, and how did this all, we're going to explore that journey.
Absolutely. So I met her, and we got the road widening stopped.
Yep.
And then she said, let me tell you a little bit about the history of this area. And that is the fact that her grandparents, the Mosleys, moved here from they worked for the Elgin Watch Company, and they came down in this area. They were looking for health reasons. They wanted to have a place to reside, and they moved into this area. It's called New Hope. Today it's called Brandon. And they bought this piece of property. There was an old cabin on it. That cabin was originally church, New Hope Church, and the New Hope School. And that's how they started. This was in 1884. She told me that story, and then one day she invited me to the property. It was a highlight because it was so cool to see that property. We designed a historical marker, which is in front of the Limona Cemetery, which tells the story of the Elgin Watch Company. I got to the personal tour of the property and stuff, and I kind of lost touch with her. And then I heard that the Timberley Trust, I knew she'd started the Timberley Trust, and I really didn't do too much. I heard that they were trying to reinstitute the Timberley Trust. So I said, well, let me see what I can do. Long story short, next thing you know, I'm on the board, and she was 90 years old at that time, and she was in and out of hospice care. So her attorney who had power of attorney, we went to the bank, and I was authorized to sign all the checks and pay the bills. So I would go there every day, pick up the mail, and pay the bills. One of the most interesting things that happened, and I laugh about this because it's a shame, but she had a policy, a life insurance policy, or a health insurance policy. You couldn't get it today. And because I paid the bills, I knew what it was. It was $2,600 a year. It provided her round-the-clock, 24/7 on-site nursing care.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you definitely couldn't get that today.
So then,
well, you could get it, but it would cost you $1 million.
And then I would get the bills.
Yeah.
And it was $2,600 a year.
Yeah.
The bills were more than that every week.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I would go and I'd see how she was doing, and we'd go back and forth. And she had Mary Roundtree, which was her on-site nurse, the primary nurse. She called me one day, and she said, I think Miss Moseley's not doing well. So I went over to see her. It was a Saturday afternoon, and she was almost comatose. And I said, Julia, and she was just there. And I said, Julia, we're going to take care of the property. We're going to do what you want. You set up the Timberley Trust to preserve it for historical reasons, and we'll do that. And she opened her eyes, and she smiled. She grabbed my hand, and I left. And about 3 o'clock the next morning, they called me and said she passed away. So I kind of made this deathbed.
Well, you gave her the comfort.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, people when they're passing, we've all been through this because we've had loved ones that have passed and we've been with them and so on and so forth. At many times they are looking for you to provide the means by which they can transition peacefully, right? And you gave her those means because uppermost in her mind is the preservation of this homestead, right? Who is gonna ensure that this homestead is gonna be here long after I'm gone?
So now the problem is I made that commitment.
You made that commitment, and now you got to live up to it.
So now
right?
I'm chairman of the board of the Timberley Trust. We've reinstituted the board. It's a very active board of long-time Brandon area people that are involved in the in the community and knew her. It's a fascinating journey. By the way, the day she died, I took the checkbook and put it away. I said, I'm not signing any checks for any. I was authorized to sign the checks to pay all of her bills, and after that, I said, no, we're getting involved in that. So now all of the bills she had a life estate. She passed. Now the Timberley Trust owns the entire property. It's 15 acres on 10 Mile Lake.
I want to take a moment to reintroduce you as the guest today on Connecting with Kim. So if you're just joining me, my guest in the chair is Mark Proctor, who is, among many things, some of which I learned new today, among many things, is the chair of the Timberley Trust. And why is that important? Because they are tasked with the effort, and joyfully so, I think, because I've met many of the people associated with it, of preserving the Moseley Homestead, which has been there from the late 1800s in Brandon. Okay, and basically I can tell you where it is. It's off 60, north of 60, just off, kind of behind Portillo's, off Lakewood. Okay, so that's where it's located. All right, so tell us about the property. You started to say it's 15 acres.
It's 15 acres, and it's on a lake, which is called 10 Mile Lake.
Yeah.
And the reason it's called 10 Mile Lake is because it was exactly 10 miles from Fort Brooke, which was down here.
Yeah.
And it was 10 miles. And it was a stopping point for the soldiers that were stationed at Fort Brooke. They were on their way to Fort Meade. They'd have these oxen-drawn carriages, and there would be troop movement. They would stop there, and there was a well with pristine water that was well known throughout Florida. They would stop, they'd have a drink of water, and then there's a bell, which is on the site. The Mosleys ring the bell, and there was only hundreds of people living there, would come and welcome the soldiers and other visitors that would come through. And that was in the 1800s. One of the things...
I love that story. Thanks for sharing that. I love that.
One of the other stories was Julie Winford Moseley is the one that I met. She was the granddaughter of the Julie Daniels Moseley that her and her husband Charles actually bought the property in 1884 and built the house. Julia Daniels Moseley was a prolific writer, and she would write stories for newspapers and all of her friends about life in Florida. Julia Winfred, the granddaughter, found that this is before Xerox machines, or copy machines.
Right.
Every letter she wrote, her grandmother wrote, she would make a copy of it, handwritten copy. She found the box and she published a book. It's called Welcome to My Sunland. It was all of her letters. She actually had copies of those letters of what it was like in the 1800s.
Yeah, in early 1900s too, probably.
In the early 19. Well, actually, the book only was 18. Just the early part, the 1800s.
All right.
But the other thing that her grandmother did, which is fascinating, is she was an artist, and she took palmetto fibers and made a wallpaper which she painted, and the whole house is covered in this wallpaper. In the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago, the Florida exhibit took a piece of that to display it because it was so unique. It's still there today. The room is unair conditioned, and it's been there for almost 140 years now, and it's fascinating because it was so unique. That was the kind of the unique part of the whole family, is the fact that they were abolitionists. So they moved from Illinois and came down to, to the South.
Right.
Even though it was after the Civil War.
Right.
They were very, very involved in
the abolishing slavery.
Exactly.
And on top of that, they love the name Julia because so many people. And I can understand that because that's very common in Southern families.
Yes.
I mean, you're from the South. My family's from the South.
The middle name was the only thing that changed.
Yeah. Middle name is the only thing that changes, but it's very common to keep using a beloved relative's name through generations. So they lived here. They thrived. I mean, well, Michael Owen, when he comes on the show, always loves to talk about how he would ride his bicycle, and there were still dirt roads in Brandon.
Absolutely.
Right, I mean, he talks about that all the time. Now, did they add on anything to the homestead?
Okay, so
I'm going to see it tomorrow, and I'm so excited I can barely contain myself.
So two things. Number one, it was on a Seminole Indian trail.
Okay.
That took it from Tampa, bypass, and there was deep ditches and stuff like that. They took an existing cabin, and that was in 1884, and that's where they first moved.
Right.
Well, in 1885, December of 1885, it burned down. So they rebuilt the existing structure there now. The house is called the Nest. Every building on the property's got a name, and that was the Nest. They have the Deluge, which is one of the first buildings they built. And I always ask people, why do you think they call it the Deluge? I'll give you the secret. It's because that's how they take a shower. They have a bucket of water and they pour the deluge over them, and that was how.
So that was the bathhouse.
That was the
called
bathhouse.
The deluge.
Yeah.
Okay, I love how the main house is called the Nest.
Yeah.
So that's where we get the 1886 from.
Yes.
Because on the Moseley Homestead, because they had to rebuild from that existing structure.
That's correct.
Okay, so are there other buildings on the property that have names?
They all have names, and this is my weak spot, is I can never remember all the names. It's a cup and bucket, which is the kitchen.
Yeah.
And the whist, which was a room off the kitchen, and Julia Moseley, the grandmother, had some delivery problems on a child, and she would go in there and live in there to stay away from everybody else and kind of have her. And and the buildings are all still there, and the names are all on the buildings. I can't remember what they're all called, but every building has a name, and it's fascinating.
And had a purpose.
Yes, and the other thing is amazing because here we are in 2025. We have meetings on the porch. It doesn't matter if it's in 90 degrees or 30 degrees. They have what they call a double dog trot. There's a cross current this way and a cross current this way, and you could sit there. There's a table, and we'd have board meetings there.
And you're cool as a cucumber.
And it's perfectly fine.
Like the houses in Ybor, the way they were built.
Yes.
They were built to let the air through.
Exactly.
Right? Southern houses always had a front porch.
Yep.
Right? Covered.
Exactly.
Right? Then you had the main door. And then on the back of the house, you had another main door because the hallway went all the way through. Everything went off that hallway.
Yep.
All the rooms, the stairs, whatnot. You had a room at the back, and then you had a sleeping porch because that door led to the sleeping porch. And that way the air flowed through the whole time. And orientation of your house was very important.
And to this day, other than we did air condition her bedroom in the final days, you know.
Sure. You want to make
other than that, the house has never been air conditioned, and yet you'll see it. It's still in its existing state.
Well, you know, this is another thing. I lived in Arizona for a while, and this was during a development building boom. So in Arizona, all the houses were ranch houses.
Yep.
Now they were ranch houses for a reason, right? Then when the developers come in, no, we have to knock those ranch houses down, and we have to build 3-4-story houses, right? No, that doesn't work in the desert. You know, or when hot climbs work best with ranch houses, right? And you and I both know that because we are both from the area of the South. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the Moseley Homestead that we should know? And besides, everybody needs to go visit.
Yeah.
Are you having regular visitations? Now, that's another thing.
Okay, so up until tomorrow, which we're actually the leadership brand, and it's going to be our first official visit of outside. What we're planning on doing, and this is a test tomorrow, is we're planning on maybe once or twice a week have tours available. But we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So right now, it's very limited the number of people that have been there. And part of it is the egress and ingress of getting in and out. And so we made arrangements with Portillo's, our neighbor, who've been very gracious to allow us to use their parking lot and be able to enter through there.
Well, shout out to Portillo's, right?
Absolutely.
They're a transplant from Chicago because everybody that lived in Chicago knows Portillo's.
Well, and of course the Mosleys were from Illinois also, so there was a great connection there. So we've got a sign now that says Portillo's Pathway to the Past.
Oh my God!
And it's a nature trail that takes you into the, and this is brand new.
I'm so excited. I was lucky enough to attend your fundraiser.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the invitation from my mother and I at the Sullivan place.
Yeah.
So how did that do?
We did real well. Our goal was to raise $5,000, and we raised $15,000. So
I'm so happy for you.
So that really works because we operate off of grants.
Yep.
And a lot of the grants are matching funds.
Yep.
So we were able to get a grant because of that. So we have a new website, which it's on there.
Yeah, he brought me this wonderful, I don't know.
Because he's got a brand new website, and I had to bring it, but it's part of the money that we used was to matching funds to do a website. We're doing some development, some new fencing that's in the process of doing. And there's some repairs that need to be done as well. So
I think people should be able to see this and appreciate it for what it was. But let's face it, when you start having people traipsing through a historical site,
Thank you.
All of that activity somehow, it can have a deleterious effect on the very thing you're trying to preserve.
And that's exactly right. Now, just let me back up. Earlier this year, we were approached by the Lifetime Network. They filmed a movie there.
Yeah, I know. I remember
Hasn't been released yet.
Yeah.
But that was one of our concerns. You got a movie crew and all these actors running around.
Yeah.
But everything was fine.
Yeah.
But that's
they were respectful.
That's been our concern is you can't just. At one point, we talked to Hillsborough County about taking over the property, but once it became a public domain, anybody could go anytime.
Anybody could go, yeah.
And we said, no, we got to hold off on that and try to work it out the best we can. Hillsborough County has been very generous. Chris Bowles recently gave us a grant to help do some of the renovations.
We love our Commissioner, Chris Bowles. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Well, he came out while the filming.
Yeah, he did.
He fell in love with it.
Yeah, he did, and he's a big supporter of the Moseley Homestead.
Thank you for your support of the Mosey Homestead. We do hope to have it open soon to the public so you can come out. I've already had people contact me about that. We'd love to have you do it, and we'll have the website up and running, and you can contact us, and we'll let people know. Probably the first part of the year before we have regular tours, but
yeah, well, it's okay. Baby steps, steps. And more importantly, you can go to the Timberley Trust and you can donate, all right? Donate to preserve this important part of Florida, not only Florida history, but Hillsborough County history. All right, Mark, thank you for being my guest today. I was really looking forward to it, and it was so
good,
fantastic.
And I hope you enjoy tomorrow.
Oh, I absolutely will. That's all we have time for today on this episode of Connecting with Kim. Thank you for joining us. And if you're just joining us now, my guest in the chair was Mark Proctor, who's the chair of the Timberley Trust, who is charged with the mission of preserving the Moseley Homestead in Brandon from the 1800s. So like and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X, where you can find out all the information about the show. Go back and watch the show. And more importantly, come back next week for another edition of Connecting with Kim.